I, 28M, just ended my 3-year relationship with my girlfriend Emma, 26F, after she went on her friend's podcast and said some things that made me realize where I actually stood in her life. I'm still processing everything, but I wanted to get this out there because I feel like I'm going crazy with all the messages I'm getting telling me I'm the asshole. Emma and I met in college and have been together since senior year. We moved to Portland together after graduation, got a nice apartment in the Pearl District, adopted a dog, the whole 9 yards. I thought we were building something real. We'd been talking about marriage more seriously lately, looking at rings online, discussing timelines. I was ready to propose within the next few months. Emma works in marketing for a sustainable fashion brand, and she's always been really into the whole lifestyle influencer thing. She has like 15K followers on Instagram and does sponsored posts for skincare brands and coffee shops. Her friend Madison runs this podcast called Real Talk with Real Women. Basically just 20-something women in Portland talking about dating, careers, whatever. It's got maybe 500 regular listeners, nothing huge, but Emma was always excited when Madison would have her on as a guest. Last Tuesday night, I was working late in our home office, finishing up some code for a client project. I'm a software developer, work mostly remote, pretty standard tech guy stuff. Emma had mentioned she was recording with Madison that evening, something about dating in your late 20s or whatever. I had my headphones on, completely focused on debugging this nightmare of a function that had been giving me trouble all week. Around 9 p.m., I took a break to grab some water and noticed Emma wasn't home yet. I figured they'd gone out for drinks after recording. Madison lives in a studio above a coffee shop downtown where they usually record. I was actually kind of relieved to have the place to myself for a bit longer to really focus on work. I decided to take a longer break and made myself some dinner. While I was eating, I remembered Emma mentioning the podcast would be going live that night instead of their usual next day release. Madison had been experimenting with live recordings to try to boost engagement. I pulled up the podcast on my phone, more out of curiosity than anything else. I liked hearing Emma talk about stuff she was passionate about, and I figured it might be nice background noise while I ate. The episode was called Are We Settling? A Brutally Honest Conversation. Already not loving that title, but whatever. Madison was there with Emma and 2 other women I didn't know. Sarah and Jess, I think. They were talking about relationships, career compromises, the usual millennial anxiety stuff. For the first 20 minutes or so, it was pretty standard. They talked about job dissatisfaction, whether they should be making more money by now, the pressure to have everything figured out. Emma was mostly quiet, which was unusual for her. She's normally the most talkative person in any room. Then Madison steered the conversation toward relationships, and that's when everything went sideways. Okay, real talk time, Madison said, and I could hear her settling into her host voice. Let's talk about romantic relationships. How do we know if we're with someone because we genuinely love them and see a future, or because it's comfortable and we're scared of being alone? Sarah jumped in first, talking about her boyfriend of 2 years and how she sometimes wondered if she was just going through the motions. Pretty standard quarter-life crisis stuff. Then Jess shared some story about realizing she was only with her ex because he was financially stable and it felt adult to be in a serious relationship. Emma, you've been quiet, Madison said. You and... I heard her pause, probably checking her notes. Jake have been together for what, 3 years now? You guys seem super solid from the outside. Do you ever feel like you're settling? There was this long pause. I stopped chewing and turned up the volume. That's such a loaded question, Emma finally said, and she gave this little laugh that I'd never heard before. It was nervous, almost guilty. I mean, define settling, right? Come on, Madison pressed, and I could hear the grin in her voice. This is real talk. No PR answers. Another pause. Then Emma spoke, and her voice was different. More honest than I'd heard her be in months, maybe years. Okay, fine. Real talk? Sometimes I wonder if I'm with Jake because he's safe. Like, he's exactly what you're supposed to want in a boyfriend. He's kind. He's reliable. He makes decent money. He's not going to cheat on me or disappear for 3 days without calling. My parents love him. My friends think he's great. He's like the perfect boyfriend on paper. But, Madison prompted, but sometimes I feel like I'm 26 and I'm living like I'm 40. Like, we have this routine. He works from home. I go to my office. We come home and watch Netflix and go to bed by 10:30. Weekends, we go hiking or try new brunch spots or visit his parents. It's all very predictable. That doesn't sound terrible, Sarah said. It's not terrible, Emma agreed quickly. That's the thing. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with him. He's genuinely a good person. But I look at my life and sometimes I think, is this it? Is this what falling in love is supposed to feel like? Or am I just comfortable? My stomach dropped. I set my fork down. What would the alternative look like? Jess asked. I don't know, Emma said, and now she was talking faster, like the words had been building up pressure for months. More spontaneous, more passionate, like Jake and I have good sex, but it's very scheduled. Tuesday and Saturday nights usually. Sometimes Sunday morning if we're feeling crazy. They all laughed. I didn't. We never fight, Emma continued. And I used to think that was great, but now I wonder if it's because we're both just going through the motions. Like we're playing house instead of actually building a life together. Do you see yourself marrying him? Madison asked. The pause that followed was the longest yet. I could hear Madison shifting in her chair, someone taking a sip of something. I think I'm supposed to, Emma finally said. He's been dropping hints about rings and timelines. My mom keeps asking when he's going to propose, and he would be a good husband. He'd remember anniversaries and help with housework and be a great dad someday. But I keep thinking, is that enough? Is being a good partner enough? Or should you feel like you can't breathe without someone? Oh shit, Sarah said softly. Yeah, Emma said, and she sounded almost relieved to be saying it out loud. Sometimes I think about what would happen if I just left, packed up my stuff and moved to like Barcelona or something, started over completely. And the thought doesn't terrify me the way it should if I was really in love, you know? It actually sounds kind of exciting. But you haven't left, Jess pointed out. No, Emma said, because leaving would mean admitting that I've wasted 3 years of both our lives, and it would mean giving up stability for, what? The possibility of something better? That's a hell of a gamble. So you're staying because it's easier than leaving, Madison said. I'm staying because... Emma paused again. Because maybe this is what adult love looks like. Maybe the butterflies and passion thing is just Hollywood bullshit. Maybe real love is finding someone who makes your life better and easier and more stable, even if they don't set your world on fire. That's depressing as hell, Sarah said. Is it? Emma asked. Or is it realistic? Jake loves me, like really loves me. He'd do anything for me. He tells me I'm beautiful every single day. He brings me coffee in bed on weekends. He listens to me complain about work drama and remembers the names of all my coworkers. He's present and attentive and thoughtful. Shouldn't that be enough? But do you love him? Madison asked quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. I love him, just Emma said finally, but her voice was small. I do. But I don't know if I'm in love with him. Does that make sense? I don't know if I ever have been, or if I just convinced myself I was, because he's such a good guy and I wanted to want him the way he wants me. I turned off the podcast. My hands were shaking. I sat in our kitchen, with the plants Emma had insisted we get, and the coffee maker I'd surprised her with last Christmas, and the little magnetic poetry set on the fridge that she liked to rearrange when she was procrastinating, and tried to process what I'd just heard. 3 years. 3 years of my life with someone who saw me as a safety net. Someone who stayed with me not because she couldn't imagine life without me, but because leaving would be inconvenient. Someone who was scheduling sex with me twice a week while fantasizing about escaping to Barcelona. The worst part was how clinical she'd sounded, like she was describing a business partnership instead of our relationship. Like I was a really good investment portfolio, stable returns, low risk, but nothing that would ever make her heart race. I thought about all the times I'd looked at her and felt that rush of gratitude that someone so beautiful and smart and funny had chosen me. I thought about the ring I'd been researching for 2 months, bookmarking different settings and trying to figure out her exact ring size without being obvious about it. I thought about the future I'd been planning, our future, and how apparently I'd been planning it alone. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Recording ran long, gonna grab drinks with the girls. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. Did she though? Or was she just going through the motions, saying the words because that's what you say to your safe, reliable boyfriend who makes your life easier? I stared at that text for a long time. Then I deleted it without responding. I went back to the office and tried to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every few minutes, I'd remember another thing Emma had said. Predictable. Playing house. I think I'm supposed to. Like our entire relationship was just something she'd settled for because it was the socially acceptable thing to do. Around midnight, I heard Emma's key in the lock. I stayed in the office, pretending to work, listening to her move around the apartment. She brushed her teeth, did her skincare routine, came to the office doorway in her pajamas. Hey babe, she said softly. How's the code coming? I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was a little flushed from the drinks, her hair messy from the Portland drizzle, looking exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. The woman who apparently had never fallen in love with me. Fine, I said. How was the podcast? Oh, it was good, she said casually. Madison's really trying to grow her audience. We talked about career stuff, mostly. Pretty boring. She was lying, standing there in our shared space, lying to my face about spending 2 hours publicly dissecting our relationship and concluding that she was settling for me. Cool, I said. I'm going to work a bit longer. Okay, she said, and she came over and kissed the top of my head. Don't stay up too late. After she left, I sat there for another hour, not coding, just thinking. By 1 a.m., I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her about the podcast. I wasn't going to have some big dramatic fight where she'd probably lie some more and I'd end up looking like the crazy boyfriend who was monitoring her conversations. I wasn't going to try to convince someone to love me the way I loved them. I was just going to end it, cleanly, quietly, with as much dignity as I could manage. The next morning, Emma left for work like normal. She made herself a smoothie, kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me. I watched her go and felt absolutely nothing. I took a personal day and spent it making arrangements. I called our landlord and asked about breaking the lease early. I researched moving companies. I opened a new bank account at a different branch and started the process of separating our finances. I wasn't on the lease. Emma had better credit when we moved in, so legally I could just walk away, but I wanted to do this right. When Emma got home that evening, I was sitting on the couch with our dog, Max, a golden retriever mix we'd adopted 6 months earlier. Emma loved that dog more than anything. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "You're home early." "We need to talk," I said. She froze. Every woman knows that tone. "Okay," she said slowly, coming to sit across from me. "What's going on?" "I'm moving out," I said. "We're done." She stared at me. "What? Jake, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from?" "I listened to your podcast last night," I said simply. The color drained from her face. "Jake?" "No," I said, cutting her off. "Don't. Just don't. You said what you said. You meant it, and now I'm responding to it." "It wasn't..." She started, then stopped. "I was just talking. It was girl talk. I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did," I said. "You meant every word. And you know what? You're right. You shouldn't have to settle. You shouldn't have to convince yourself to love someone. You shouldn't have to stay with someone just because they're safe and convenient." "Jake, please," she said, and now she was crying. "I love you. I do love you." "You love the idea of me," I said. "You love what I represent. Stability, security, the path of least resistance. But you don't love me. You said it yourself. You don't know if you've ever been in love with me." She was full on sobbing now. I was just questioning things. Everyone questions things. "It doesn't mean I want to break up." "But you do want to break up," I said gently. "You want to go to Barcelona. You want passion and spontaneity and a love that takes your breath away. You just don't want to be the one to end things because that would make you the bad guy." "That's not fair," she whispered. "Isn't it?" I asked. "Emma, you've been mentally and emotionally checked out of this relationship for months, maybe longer. You're going through the motions because it's easier than having a difficult conversation. But I heard that conversation anyway." She wiped her eyes, leaving black mascara streaks on her cheeks. "So that's it? 3 years, and you're just going to throw it all away because of one conversation?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "You already did that. I'm just acknowledging reality." "What if I fight for us?" she asked. "What if I prove to you that I do love you, that I want this to work?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the panic in her eyes. Not the panic of someone losing the love of their life, but the panic of someone whose safety net was disappearing. "You can't prove something that isn't true," I said, "and I'm not interested in being with someone who has to convince themselves to want me." We talked for another 2 hours. She cried, she bargained, she promised things would be different. She said she'd been depressed lately, that she'd been questioning everything in her life, not just our relationship. She said the podcast was just her working through some feelings, that it didn't mean she wanted out. But I kept coming back to one thing, the way she'd sounded when she talked about leaving. Not scared or heartbroken, but excited, like she'd been waiting for permission to want something different. I moved out that weekend. Emma's parents drove down from Seattle to help her through it, and her mom spent the entire time glaring at me like I was the devil incarnate. I didn't blame her. From the outside, I'm sure it looked like I was abandoning their daughter out of nowhere. I took my clothes, my computer, my books, some furniture that was clearly mine. I left everything else, including Max. Emma would need him more than I would, and besides, I was moving into a studio apartment that didn't allow pets. The hardest part was watching Emma pack up our shared life. 3 years of accumulated stuff, photos, souvenirs from trips, little gifts we'd given each other. She kept asking if I wanted this mug or that book, and I kept saying no. I didn't want reminders. "What about this?" she asked, holding up a framed photo of us from last New Year's Eve. We looked so happy in it, arms around each other, champagne in our hands, her face lit up with laughter. "Keep it," I said, "or throw it out, whatever you want." She started crying again. "Jake, please. We can work through this. We can go to therapy. We can take a break and figure things out." "Emma," I said gently, "you told a room full of people, and whoever was listening online, that you don't know if you've ever been in love with me, that you're only with me because I'm safe and your parents like me, that you fantasize about leaving and starting over somewhere else. What exactly is there to work through?" "I was confused," she said. "I was having a quarter-life crisis. I didn't mean it." "But you did mean it," I said. "And even if you didn't, even if it was just momentary doubt, I don't want to be with someone who sees me as a consolation prize. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if you're staying because you love me or because leaving would be too much work. That seemed to finally get through to her. She nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I did love you, she said quietly. Maybe not the way you loved me, but I did love you. I know, I said. And I'm grateful for that, but it wasn't enough for either of us. I finished packing and loaded my car. Before I left, I sat on the floor and said goodbye to Max, who seemed confused by all the boxes and the tension in the apartment. Emma watched from the doorway. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. You? She shrugged. I guess I'll have to be. I stood up, took one last look around the place that had been our home, and left. Update. 2 weeks later, the aftermath has been, interesting. Emma's been texting me sporadically, nothing dramatic, just random thoughts or questions about mail that's still coming to the apartment. I've been responding politely but briefly. I'm not trying to be cruel, but I also don't want to give her false hope that this is temporary. Madison apparently took down the podcast episode after a few days. I'm guessing Emma asked her to, probably after realizing that her ex-boyfriend had heard the whole thing. A little late for that, but whatever. I've been staying with my friend Ben while I look for a more permanent place. He was shocked when I told him what happened, said he'd always thought Emma and I were solid. That was the hardest part of all this, realizing that even our closest friends had bought into the illusion that we were happy. Dude, she really said all that? Ben asked when I told him the story. On a podcast where people could hear it? Yeah, I said. I mean, it wasn't like she was trying to hurt me. I don't think she even considered that I might listen to it, but that almost makes it worse, Like that's how she really felt when she thought no one was listening who mattered. Ben shook his head. That's cold, man. I'm sorry. The weird thing is, I'm not devastated the way I thought I would be. Sad, yes. Disappointed, definitely. But there's also this sense of relief that I didn't expect. Like I've been holding my breath for months without realizing it, and now I can finally exhale. I keep thinking about what Emma said about our routine, how predictable everything was. She wasn't wrong. We had fallen into patterns, but I'd thought that was what relationships looked like when they matured. Apparently, she saw it as evidence that we were just going through the motions. Maybe we both were. I've been doing things differently these past 2 weeks. Going out on weeknights, staying up late, eating breakfast for dinner, taking random drives just to see where they lead. Small things, but they feel significant. Like I'm remembering who I was before I became half of a couple. Emma's friend Sarah, one of the women from the podcast, reached out to me on Instagram. She apologized for the whole situation and said she hoped I was doing okay. I appreciated that. She also mentioned that Emma was struggling, but didn't go into details. I didn't ask. I'm not blocked on Emma's social media, so I can see that she's been posting a lot more than usual. Lots of inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself. A few photos of her and Max hiking trails we used to explore together. No mention of the breakup, but people who know us are probably putting the pieces together. My mom called yesterday. Emma had apparently reached out to her, which surprised me. They'd always gotten along well, but I didn't think they had the kind of relationship where Emma would contact her independently. She's very upset, my mom said carefully. She says you broke up with her without warning, that she doesn't understand what happened. What did you tell her? I asked. That I was sorry she was hurting, but that if you ended things, you must have had good reasons. I love my mom. She said she wants to talk to you, my mom continued. That she's been trying to reach you. She has been reaching out, I said. I respond to practical stuff, mail, logistics, things like that. But if she wants to have a big conversation about getting back together, I'm not interested. Are you sure? My mom asked gently. 3 years is a long time, honey. People say things they don't mean when they're confused or scared. I thought about how to explain it. Mom, if you found out Dad had been telling people that he wasn't sure he loved you, that he was only with you because it was convenient and stable, would you want to work it out? There was a long pause. That would be very hard to come back from, she admitted. Yeah, I said. That's where I am. The conversation with my mom got me thinking, though. Was I being too harsh? Was I throwing away something good because my ego was bruised? But every time I started to second guess myself, I'd remember Emma's voice on that podcast. The way she'd sounded when she talked about leaving, not heartbroken at the thought of losing me, but excited about the possibility of something different. The way she described our sex life like it was a chore she'd optimized for efficiency. That wasn't love. That was settling. And she'd been right about one thing. We both deserved better than that. Final update. 1 month later, Emma showed up at my new apartment last night. I'd finally found a place, a 1-bedroom in Southeast Portland. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I was assembling an IKEA bookshelf and listening to music when someone knocked on my door around 8 p.m. I looked through the peephole and there she was, holding what looked like a bottle of wine and looking nervous. I considered not answering. I'd been doing really well, getting back to feeling like myself, and I knew this conversation would probably set me back. But I also knew she'd just keep coming back if I avoided her, and I preferred to deal with things head on. "Hi," she said when I opened the door. "Hi," I said back. "Can I come in? I brought wine." She held up the bottle, a nice Pinot Noir from a winery we'd visited together last year. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. "Sure," I said, stepping aside. She looked around the apartment, taking in the half-assembled furniture, the boxes I still hadn't unpacked, the general chaos of someone starting over. "It's nice," she said, though it obviously wasn't. "Very you." I didn't know what that meant, so I didn't respond. I got 2 glasses from the kitchen and opened the wine. We sat on opposite ends of my couch, a hand-me-down from Ben that had seen better days, and didn't talk for a few minutes. Finally, Emma spoke. "I fucked up," she said simply. "Yeah," I agreed. "You did." She flinched a little, like she'd been expecting me to reassure her or minimize it. "I've been thinking about what you said," she continued, "about how I'd been checking out emotionally, and you were right. I had been." I sipped my wine and waited. "I think I was depressed," she said. "Not clinically, maybe, but just stuck. And instead of dealing with that, I was blaming you, blaming us, making it about the relationship instead of admitting that I was the problem." "Emma? No, let me finish," she said. "I was scared. Scared of being 26 and feeling like my life was already decided. Scared of never experiencing that crazy, passionate movie kind of love. Scared that if I married you, I'd always wonder, what if? And instead of talking to you about it, I talked to everyone else. I was a coward." She was crying now, but quietly. Not the dramatic sobbing from when I'd ended things, just tears rolling down her cheeks. "I went on that podcast, and I said those things because it felt good to voice all the doubts I'd been carrying around. Like I was being so honest and brave, but I wasn't being honest with the person who mattered most. I felt something crack open in my chest, but I tried to ignore it. The worst part," she continued, "is that after you left, after I had all the space and freedom I thought I wanted, I realized that I'd been an idiot. That what we had wasn't boring or predictable. It was stable and real and good. That you weren't holding me back from some amazing adventure. You were the best part of my regular, ordinary life." She looked at me directly for the first time since she'd arrived. "I love you, Jake. Not the way I thought I was supposed to. Not like in movies or songs, but in this quiet, constant way that I didn't even realize was there until it was gone. You made me better. You made everything easier and warmer and more fun, and I threw it away because I was too immature to recognize what I had." I set down my wine glass. My hands were shaking. "That's a beautiful speech," I said quietly, "and I believe that you mean it. But Emma, it doesn't change anything." Her face crumpled. "Why not?" "Because you're still doing it," I said. "You're still making this about what you want and need and feel. You came here tonight not because you realized you hurt me, but because you realized you made a mistake that affected you." "That's not fair," she whispered. "Isn't it?" I asked. 3 years together, and you never once talked to me about feeling trapped or bored or uncertain about us. But you talked to Madison. You talked to your coworkers. You probably talked to your mom. I was the last person to know that my girlfriend was having doubts about our relationship." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. "You want to know what the worst part was?" I continued. "Not the doubts themselves. Everyone has doubts. It was how you talked about me. Like I was this consolation prize you'd settled for. Like loving me was this burden you were carrying because you were supposed to." "I didn't mean it like that," she said desperately. "But that's how you felt," I said. "And maybe you don't feel that way now, but what happens in 6 months when the novelty of missing me wears off? What happens when you get bored again, or scared again? Or when you meet someone who seems more exciting than your safe, reliable boyfriend?" She didn't answer. "Emma, you told a room full of people that you fantasized about leaving me and starting over somewhere else, that the thought excited you instead of terrifying you. Do you understand what that did to me? Do you understand what it feels like to realize that the person you love most in the world sees you as an obstacle to their happiness?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I would take it all back if I could." "I know you would," I said, "but you can't, and I can't unhear it." We sat in silence for a while. Emma finished her wine and wiped her eyes. "So that's it?" she asked. "There's nothing I can do?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe if you'd come to me right after the podcast before I had to find out by accident. Maybe if you'd owned up to everything immediately instead of lying about what you talked about. Maybe if you'd spent the last month focusing on what you'd done to me instead of what you'd lost. But," I shrugged, "but you didn't do any of those things. And I can't build a future with someone I don't trust to be honest with me about the most important things." She nodded slowly. "I understand." She stood up to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth," she said, "you were never boring. You were never just safe or convenient. You were the best relationship I'd ever had, and I was too stupid to realize it. I hope you find someone who appreciates what I couldn't." After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at the half-assembled bookshelf and thinking about roads not taken. Did I still love her? Yeah, probably. But love isn't always enough. Trust matters. Respect matters. And I couldn't respect someone who'd rather complain about me to strangers than work on our problems together. Maybe in a year or two, when I've had more time to heal and she's had more time to grow, we could try to be friends. But we'd never be anything more than that. I finished assembling the bookshelf. It was crooked and wobbled a little, but it was mine, and it would hold my books just fine. Some endings aren't dramatic. They're not passionate or devastating or romantic. They're just quiet. Final. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. I'm doing okay. Better than okay, actually. I've been dating a little, nothing serious yet, but it's nice to remember what it feels like to be with someone who's excited to see you, who doesn't treat spending time with you like an obligation. Emma was right about one thing. I am safe and reliable and stable, but I'm learning that those aren't consolation prizes. They're actually pretty great qualities to have. The right person won't see them as boring. They'll see them as rare. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful, actually. Better to find out who someone really is before you marry them than after. Emma did me a favor, even if that wasn't her intention. And hey, at least I have a good story to tell at parties now. Update 6 months later. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. I'm writing this from my new apartment. Not the studio I moved into after the breakup, but a proper 2-bedroom place in the Alberta Arts District. I upgraded about 3 months ago when I realized I was actually happy with my new life and wanted more space to enjoy it. The biggest news is that I'm seeing someone. Her name is Lily, and she's a graphic designer who works at a firm downtown. We met at a coffee shop, of all the cliched places. I was there working on a client project. I've gone full freelance now, which is another story. And she was at the next table over, swearing creatively at her laptop screen because Illustrator had crashed and eaten an hour of work. I offered to help her recover the file, and we ended up talking for 3 hours. She's smart, funny, passionate about her work, and when she looks at me, I can see genuine interest in her eyes. Not the kind of calculated assessment I'd grown used to with Emma, but actual excitement to be spending time with me. We've been together for 4 months now, and it's different in every way that matters. She texts me random thoughts during the day. She gets excited about showing me new restaurants or bands she's discovered. When I bring her coffee in bed on weekend mornings, she acts like I've given her a gift, instead of just doing what any decent boyfriend would do. The difference between being appreciated and being taken for granted is stark once you've experienced both. "You know what I love about you?" she said to me last week while we were making dinner together. "You never make me guess what you're thinking. If something's bothering you, you tell me. If you're happy, I can see it. You're just present." It hit me then how much emotional labor I'd been doing with Emma, trying to read her moods, wondering if she was pulling away, analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. With Lily, communication is straightforward. If she's stressed about work, she says so. If she wants to spend a quiet night in, she doesn't hint around it. If she's in the mood for sex, she initiates instead of waiting for Tuesday or Saturday to roll around. The freelance thing happened almost by accident. About 2 months after the breakup, my biggest client offered me a full-time contract position, but working remotely with better pay than my previous job. It felt like a sign. I'd been playing it safe for so long, staying at companies because they were stable, because that's what responsible adults do. But Emma's words had stuck with me, the part about being predictable and boring. Maybe it was time to take some calculated risks. So I took the leap, and it's been incredible. I work with 3 different clients now, all on interesting projects. I make about 40% more than I did at my old job. I set my own schedule, and I actually enjoy what I'm doing again. Turns out, stable and boring had been a choice I was making, not an inevitable consequence of being a responsible adult. Ben still can't believe the transformation. "Dude, you're like a different person," he said last month when Lily and I met him and his girlfriend Sarah for drinks. "Remember when you used to stress about taking a sick day? Now you're talking about maybe buying rental property and taking a month off to travel through Europe." He wasn't wrong. The man Emma had described on that podcast, the one who went to bed at 30 every night and followed the same routine every week. He feels like a stranger to me now. I stay up until 2 a.m. when I'm excited about a project. I take weekend trips on a whim. Last month, Lily and I drove to the coast because we woke up on Saturday morning and decided we wanted to see the ocean. I never would have done that with Emma, I told Ben. She would have needed 2 weeks advance notice and a detailed itinerary. "Yeah, but would you have suggested it with Emma?" he asked, and that stopped me cold. Because he was right. I'd been just as responsible for our rut as she was. I'd stopped suggesting spontaneous things because I'd learned she preferred plans. I'd stopped trying new restaurants because she had her favorites. I'd become the boring, predictable boyfriend she described because somewhere along the way I decided that's what she wanted. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd complained about our relationship being stagnant while actively discouraging anything that might have made it more dynamic. But I don't want to give the impression that this is all about proving Emma wrong or showing her what she lost. Honestly, I barely think about her anymore, except when something reminds me of how different things are now. Like last month when Lily and I were at Powell's Books. We'd been browsing for over an hour, just wandering through different sections, talking about books we loved, authors we wanted to try. She was excited about everything. A cookbook with pictures that made her hungry, a poetry collection that made her want to write again, a travel guide for Iceland that made her start planning a hypothetical trip. "We should go," I said, pointing to a photo of the Northern Lights. "What? To Iceland?" she laughed. "Jake, that would be so expensive." "So we save up for it," I said. "Put aside money each month, plan for next winter." "Why not?" She stared at me for a second, then broke into this huge grin. "You're serious." "Dead serious. Life's short. Let's go see the Northern Lights." She kissed me right there in the travel section, and I realized that this was what Emma had been looking for without knowing it. Not Barcelona specifically, but someone who would say, "Why not?" instead of "maybe someday." The Emma situation itself has had some interesting developments. About 3 months ago, I got a text from Madison, the podcast host. She apologized for the whole situation and said she felt partially responsible for what had happened. Apparently, Emma had asked her to delete the episode because it had caused problems. By then, it had been up for several days and people had already downloaded it. "I should have thought about how public this was," Madison wrote. "Emma seemed to be working through some stuff, and I should have suggested she talk to you privately instead of airing it out on the show. I feel bad that you got hurt." I appreciated the apology, though I didn't blame Madison. She was just doing her job as a podcast host, trying to create engaging content. The responsibility for what Emma said was entirely Emma's. Madison also mentioned that Emma had been struggling since our breakup. She'd apparently had a brief rebound relationship with some guy she met on a dating app, but it had ended badly. She'd also had a falling out with Caroline in my story, but let me call her Ashley for clarity, because Ashley had gotten tired of Emma's constant complaints about how I'd overreacted to the podcast. "She keeps saying you should have talked to her about it instead of just ending things," Madison wrote. But what was there to talk about? You heard how she really felt. What were you supposed to do with that information? Exactly. I'd saved us both a lot of wasted time and painful conversations by just acting on what I'd learned. The most recent Emma development came 2 weeks ago. I was at New Seasons Market, this local grocery chain that we used to shop at together, when I literally ran into her. Not metaphorically. She was coming around the corner from the produce section just as I was heading there, and we nearly collided. "Jake," she said, and I could see her trying to read my expression, looking for some sign of lingering anger or hurt. "Hi, Emma," I said. "How are you?" She looked tired, thinner than I remembered, and there was something different about her energy, less of that confident, influencer-polished vibe she used to have. "I'm okay," she said. "Good. I'm good. How are you? You look really good." I was wearing a new shirt Lily had picked out for me, and I'd been working out more consistently. I felt good, and apparently it showed. "Thanks. I'm doing well." There was this awkward pause where we both stood there holding our shopping baskets, not sure what to say next. "I heard you went freelance," she said finally. "That's great. I always thought you'd be good at that." Had she? I didn't remember her ever encouraging me to take that risk, but maybe she'd thought it privately. "Yeah, it's been really good for me. More freedom, better pay, interesting projects." "That's amazing," she said, and she seemed genuinely happy about it. "I'm glad things are working out for you." Another pause. "Jake, she started, then stopped herself. "Never mind, it's not important." "What?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. She took a deep breath. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Why you ended things the way you did. I spent a lot of time being angry about it, feeling like you'd thrown away what we had over something I said when I was drunk and confused. But I get it now. You heard who I really was in that moment, and you didn't want to be with that person." I didn't know what to say to that. "The thing is," she continued, "I didn't want to be that person either. The one who stayed in a relationship out of convenience, who saw love as settling. But I was scared to leave, and I was scared to stay, and I was taking it out on you without even realizing it." "Emma?" "No, let me finish," she said, echoing what she'd said in my apartment months earlier. "I want you to know that you were right. About all of it. I wasn't in love with you the way you deserved, and you calling me out on it, even indirectly, was the wake-up call I needed." This wasn't what I'd expected from a chance encounter at the grocery store. "I've been in therapy," she continued, "working on figuring out why I do that, why I sabotage good things because they feel too easy or safe. And I realize now that what I called boring and predictable, most people would call loving and secure. You were offering me exactly what I said I wanted, a partner who showed up consistently, who made me feel valued and cared for, who was building toward a future with me, and I threw it away because it didn't feel like a romantic movie. "How are you doing now?" I asked, and I meant it genuinely. "Better," she said. "Different. I'm learning to appreciate stability instead of running from it. I'm dating someone new, actually. Someone who..." She paused, looking for the right words. "Someone who makes me want to be the kind of person who deserves stability, if that makes sense." It did make sense, and I was happy for her. "I'm seeing someone too," I said. "It's been really good." "I'm glad," she said, and she seemed to mean it. "You deserve someone who knows how lucky they are." We said goodbye after that, both of us heading to different parts of the store. It was the closure I didn't know I'd been wanting. Not dramatic or emotional, just complete. When I told Lily about the encounter later that night, she listened without getting jealous or weird about it. "How did it feel, seeing her?" she asked. "Honestly, like running into an old friend from college or something. Someone who was important to me once, but who I'd naturally grown apart from. No anger, no lingering feelings, just recognition of shared history." "That's healthy," Lily said. "It means you really are over it." She was right. I was over it in a way I hadn't been even a month earlier. Emma had been a chapter in my life, an important one, but the book had moved on to better things. The freelance work has opened up opportunities I never expected. One of my clients is a startup that's developing an app for sustainable travel. They help people find eco-friendly accommodations and transportation options. They've been so happy with my work that they've asked me to come on full-time as their lead developer with equity and everything. It's exactly the kind of opportunity that Emma always said she wanted me to pursue, ironically. Lily's been incredibly supportive of the whole thing. When I told her I was nervous about taking on such a big role, she said, "Jake, you're one of the smartest, most capable people I know. If they offered you this job, it's because they believe you can do it. And I believe you can do it too." That's the difference right there. Emma would have said something like, "It sounds great, but what if it doesn't work out? What about the security of freelancing? Always focusing on the potential downsides, always making me second guess myself." Lily celebrates my successes and helps me work through my doubts. She doesn't try to talk me out of taking risks. She helps me figure out how to take them smartly. Last week, we were talking about the future, not in the heavy, where is this relationship going way, but just daydreaming about what we wanted our lives to look like. "I want to travel more," she said. "Not just vacation travel, but really experiencing different places. Maybe spend a month in different cities, working remotely." "That sounds amazing," I said. "Where would you want to go first?" "Barcelona, maybe," she said, then laughed. "That's so cliche, right? But I've always wanted to see the architecture there." Barcelona, Emma's fantasy escape destination. But hearing Lily talk about it didn't trigger any negative memories or comparisons. Instead, I found myself getting excited about the possibility of exploring a new city with someone who would see it as an adventure we were sharing, not an escape from something she was unhappy with. "Let's do it," I said. "Let's start planning a Barcelona trip." "Really?" she said, sitting up on the couch. "Really. My new job will be fully remote anyway. We could spend a month there, work during the day, explore in the evenings and on weekends." She kissed me then, and I realized that this was what partnership was supposed to feel like. Not two people settling for each other because it was convenient, but two people actively choosing each other and building something together. I took the job offer. I start next month, and Lily and I are planning the Barcelona trip for early next year. We're also looking at moving in together, not because it makes financial sense or because it's the next logical step in our relationship timeline, but because we genuinely want to wake up next to each other every morning. "Are you nervous?" she asked me last night. "About living together? I know your last relationship ended badly." "Not nervous," I said, thinking about it. "Excited. This feels completely different." And it does. With Emma, moving in together had felt like checking a box. We'd been dating for a year, we were spending most nights together anyway. It made sense to split rent. With Lily, it feels like a choice we're making because we want to build a life together. I think about that podcast episode sometimes, the one that changed everything. Emma had asked whether being a good partner was enough, or whether you should feel like you can't breathe without someone. At the time, it had felt like a rejection of everything I was offering. But I think she was asking the wrong question. It's not about finding someone you can't breathe without. That sounds exhausting and codependent. It's about finding someone who makes you want to breathe deeper, who makes you excited about the future you're creating together. With Lily, I don't feel like I can't breathe without her. I feel like I breathe better when she's around. That's the difference between settling and choosing. Emma felt like she was settling for me because she was trying to convince herself to want something she didn't actually want. But I wasn't the problem. The relationship dynamic was. We'd fallen into patterns that worked for neither of us, and instead of fixing them, we both just accepted that this was what love looked like. With Lily, we're building something new from the ground up. We're not following a script of what relationships are supposed to look like. We're figuring out what works for us specifically. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm not worried about whether I'm enough for someone. I know I am because I'm with someone who chose me, not because I'm safe or convenient, but because she genuinely enjoys who I am. That podcast episode was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it hurt like hell at the time. It forced me to stop accepting less than I deserved and to become the kind of person who wouldn't accept less than I deserved. Emma's doing well from what I can tell. I hope she finds what she's looking for. Not the fantasy version of love from movies and songs, but the real thing. The kind where you choose each other every day, not because you have to, but because you want to. As for me, I already found it. TLDR. Girlfriend went on a podcast and basically said she was settling for me and fantasized about leaving. I ended the relationship immediately. 6 months later, I'm happier than I've ever been, dating someone who actually chooses me and building the life I always wanted.